Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. My name is Jack. I'm the founder here at Scenarios. We're a marketing agency based here in London that helps e-commerce brands set up effective campaigns on Facebook and Instagram. And in this week's video, we're going to be talking about a highly requested topic, which is what are the prerequisites for running effective Facebook and Instagram advertising campaigns. There seems to be a lot of frustration from e-commerce brands that are not having success with their Facebook and Instagram advertising. And what I would say is 9 times out of 10, the problem doesn't necessarily lie in the Facebook and Instagram advertising specifically. It sometimes has to do with the brand. So as I said, we're going to be talking about what are the prerequisites of running Facebook and Instagram advertising and help you diagnose if there's something that's not working from your Facebook and Instagram ads, if it has to do with the brand specifically. The first thing I want to talk about is arguably the most important thing to think about if you're an e-commerce brand that's just starting out, which is the product differentiation or the demand for the product. Unfortunately, most products that are created on the market are created without confirming the product in the market or without confirming that there's a demand for that specific product. And your ability as a brand to bring something new to the market and solve a problem to a wide range of consumers is the biggest contributing factor to the success of your advertising. It doesn't matter how powerful your marketing message is. If no one really wants your product or it doesn't really solve a problem for them, no one's going to buy it. So if you're an e-commerce brand who's just started and you have little traction, you really need to be able to answer this question. What makes your product special or different from all of the products on the market? The answer to this question doesn't necessarily have to be that your product is so innovative that there's really nothing like it, but you need to be at least providing value or something beyond what the typical brand is doing. And as the e-commerce space is becoming more competitive, the bar is set higher. So only a few years ago, if you just had good packaging, a pretty solid product, and a nice website, you could get away with getting pretty decent returns with Facebook and Instagram ads. Now, quite frankly, there are hundreds, if not thousands of brands that have a nice website and meet that criteria. So you have to really ask what you're bringing to the table. So how do you know if your product is truly different? You really want to try to get as much customer feedback as possible, especially if you're just starting out. And what's your reaction? What's the reaction of people, when they actually see your product or idea? Is it like, yeah, okay, this is a nice product, or okay, I could really use this, or I was actually looking for something like this and I couldn't find it? And obviously you're trying to find the second answer for your product. I know that I have a lot of followers that are within the beauty space. So if you're a beauty brand and your current unique selling propositions is that you're clean and organic, that's not really compelling enough anymore, as most new brands are clean, organic, sulfate free, or whatever the case may be. And so you really need to think beyond that. Let's look at a very quick few examples of brands that do this really well. The first brand that really comes to mind is a brand called Mobot, and I'll put up an example right here. It is essentially a water bottle / foam roller hybrid, and it's a really unique product because it solves a real problem to the consumer. When I first heard of that product, I was like, okay, I could really use this. When you're going to the gym, you don't want to be carrying too many things, and so being able to have a foam roller act as a water bottle as well is absolutely brilliant. And obviously, as you can imagine, because there's demand for that product and it solves a genuine problem, their advertising efforts are going to be met with a lot of demand. And even if their marketing message isn't 100% on point or their ads aren't especially creative, they're still going to get really great returns because there's just no products out there on the market like it. The second example of a brand that does this really well is Beard Brand. They create beard oil products for men, and you might say, well, there's nothing too special about beard oils for men. But when Beard Brand actually launched, there was seriously no products for men out there that are at least established within the direct-to-consumer space. So they did exceptionally well by taking advantage of a section of the market that was being underserved. The third example that I thought I'll add in there, they bring something different to the market. It's the brand's called Brida Studio. They're kind of a women's watchwear brand. And what's interesting about Brida Studio, you might think, well, what does Brida Studio bring? I mean, there's so many watch brands out there, but if you look at their website, they have a very, very unique aesthetic. It's very up and coming, and quite frankly, there are no other watch brands that are meeting that aesthetic and that demand at the moment. And so they're able, again, to bring something to the market that is not currently occupying that space, and they're going to get a lot of demand and a lot of returns for it. Okay, so the second thing that I want to talk about as a prerequisite to running successful Facebook and Instagram advertising campaign is being able to build up an organic following, organic traffic, and sales. The thing you want to consider before running ads is really building up an organic either fan base or customer base. And something that I always mention to brands that we talk to is having at least 10,000 Instagram followers helps increase the trust the consumer has with the brand. This is really important. As you can imagine, if you visit an Instagram page and it only has 100 followers and no one's really liking or commenting on the posts, you're much less likely to trust the brand. Also, having organic sales from the website, so people actually buying your products organically, will give you some pixel data to work with when you first start out with your ads, and it will also give you access to different audiences on Facebook, like lookalike audiences, that can be very, very powerful. The third thing that you might want to consider doing, or I would say is a prerequisite really to running effective ads, is just doing some sort of PR, whether it be working with a small number of influencers or getting some magazine mentions. This will help your conversion rates tremendously, as you can imagine, again, by increasing the trust the consumer has with the brand. There's so many brands out there that it's also important to differentiate yourself with that regard, and having multiple kind of mentions from different magazines is something worthwhile and will pay dividends down the line. The fourth thing you also really need to consider when you're looking to run larger scale campaigns on Facebook and Instagram is your ability to actually create content. The name of the game in Facebook advertising at the moment, at least, is testing different content variation hooks. And so having the ability to create content is crucial. And in the early stages, you probably want to focus on creating content yourself, as you don't have the means to do otherwise. But if you are further down the line and you have some money to spend, you definitely should consider hiring an agency to help you with producing higher quality content, because again, that's going to make the differentiating factor between mediocre ads that run somewhat profitably and then ads that are really able to scale. The fifth and last thing that I want to mention, and I don't hear this talked about very often, is understanding your consumer and what sort of advertising works for them. Again, one thing I really don't hear being talked about is how advertising can actually hurt your brand. And so you want to be really careful when you're first starting out not to create advertising that either cheapens the brand or sends the wrong marketing message, especially if you're a brand at a higher price point. You don't want to fall for the trap of creating cheap looking ads with different marketing tactics like huge discounts. This is very likely to hurt your brand image rather than improve it. So one thing I would consider if I was a brand owner that had a higher priced product is, what's the aesthetic that we're going for? How are we going to keep that consistent? What is the brand voice that we're going to be talking to the consumer to, and how we also maintain that throughout the ads to make sure that none of the campaigns that we're running is actually hurting the brand or making it look cheap or kind of gimmicky. And there you have it, guys. Those are 5 things that I wanted to talk to you guys about today when it comes to the prerequisites to running in Facebook and Instagram advertising. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, the bar is set higher overall for the e-commerce space. There's just so many brands out there, so you really need to consider all of those elements before you're looking to make some serious investments in Facebook and Instagram advertising. Just to summarize very quickly, the first thing that we talked about was how do you actually make your product differentiated, and what are you actually bringing to the market. This is really, really important before you even consider running ads, is to make sure that there's genuine demand for your product and you're able to answer the question of how you're able to, what do you do different than all the other brands out there, quite frankly. The second thing we talked about is building up somewhat of an organic following before you jump into Facebook ads. Again, it gives you a lot of data to go off of with your ads, and it just increases the trust the consumer has with the brand when you have, let's say, 10,000 followers. Third thing we talked about was doing some sort of PR, getting some mentions in magazines, working with influencers. We created a whole video last week that I'll link up in the cards about the importance of influencer marketing that you can check out. Really, really important here as well to build the trust of the consumer. Finally, your ability to create content. Facebook ads is very, very content demanding, if you will. You need to be creating content a lot, so that's really important to consider. And the last thing is really understanding your consumer and the aesthetic that you want to go for, and making sure that the sort of advertising you're creating is not cheapening the brand or having a negative effect on the brand. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did find the content useful, be sure to subscribe. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers. We're also making some investments in the YouTube channel. As you can see here, we've upgraded the audio, and so we can bring you higher quality content. We would really appreciate it if you subscribed for more content like this. And be sure to give us a comment on what sort of content you'd like to see next. What do you like about the videos, what we could use work on, and we'll see you guys in the next one.